Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
But a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly,
he's our
dad who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
Well, good Sunday afternoon, my brothers and sisters across our beloved Zion. I am Skip Mason and delighted to welcome you to another afternoon conversation celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And I am so delighted today that we have with us the wife, daughter, and son-in-law, with us sharing Mrs. Norma Jean Cummings, Reverend Dr. Julius, and Dr. Denise Cummings Clay are with us, and it will be my joy and delight to bring them up in just a few moments for our weekly conversation on the life and legacy of our beloved 40th Bishop, Bishop James Lee Cummings. Let me first begin by greeting our senior bishop, Bishop Lawrence Reddick, and the College of Bishops and their spouses, including our First Lady, Mrs. Wendy Jones Reddick, to Bishop James Walker and Bishop Thomas Brown, chair and co-chair of our CIT committee, Communications and Information and Technology Committee, and the hardest working woman. I think I heard somebody mention that yesterday during the General Connectional Board meeting. The hardest working woman in CME business, Dr. Teresa Duhart, who helped to oversee the management of a 7 or 8 hour general board meeting. I might be exaggerating a little, but it was close to that. But it was magnificently done. And it ended, of course, with the investiture of the new chairman of the board, College of Bishops, Bishop Kenneth Wayne Carter. So I always want to give thanks to and acknowledge the bishops for their continued support, and a special thanks to Dr. Duhart for including this little old show in her report. It has just been a joy for me to be able to share our bishops' families and various aspects of the history of the CME Church. And I'm excited that throughout the month of September, we have some wonderful programs planned. Looking forward to sharing, of course, with Mrs. Gladys Brown on the life and legacy of Bishop Elin Brown. And then in a few weeks, we have we have Bishop Godwin Umoate and his wonderful family all the way from Nigeria live on Facebook. And I'm so excited to be sharing with he and Sister Elizabeth and the great work that they are doing there. Now, before I bring our Cummings family up, today we're going to have something additional and special on top of this great family. We're going to have the world premiere of the Raptuous Scenes production featuring the children of the Episcopacy. I'm going to give you a little tease right now, and then at the end, and you're going to have to wait until the end, you will see the entire production, and I promise you, you will be blessed. Check out the trailer. I cannot wait to share this masterpiece with you. And Dr. Kelli Williamson Key will be here, who arranged this, and maybe Reverend Valencia Edner. They'll be here to give us a little bit about that. But now it is my joy and delight to share and to bring to the screen the family of Bishop Cummings. We have all the way from California, Mrs. Norma Jean Cummings. And all the way from New York, we have Reverend Dr. Julius and Reverend Dr. Denise Cummings Clay. Oh, they dropped off. Well, we're going to wait a second and they'll come on back. But Mrs. Cummings, hello. How are you?
Hello, I am fine. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It is just such a delight to have you on. We've been trying to get this going for a minute, but I am so glad that everything has worked out for you, that you could be on today. And I know that Denise and Julius, Dr. Denise and Dr. Julius will be back on in just a moment. Somehow, with technology, things happen. And so they dropped off. Let me also take a moment to thank a young man who is a very dear friend, and he happens to be your pastor. And he is with you, the Right Reverend Pastor Bernard Jackson, pastor of the Phillips Temple. Reverend Jackson, where are you, my friend?
You better drop the right.
Yeah, Dr. Mason, thank you so much for the honor, but no, it's okay. Just call me Reverend Bernard Jackson.
Reverend Bernard Jackson, Pastor Jackson, thank you so much for driving 2 hours, first to see your member, and secondly, to help to make sure that she made it on today. So I just wanted to thank you, and the West Mitchell Street family sends their love to you. And I know your mother, my prayer warrior, Mrs. Julian Jones, the hardest praying woman in the world, is watching. So if you want to say hello to your mom, by all means, go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, I just want to express a sincere gratitude to you, Dr. Mason, for what you have done as we're celebrating this great milestone in our Zion. Thank you so much for how you have interviewed each of our bishop, each of our leaders, our Episcopal fathers and mother, and how these persons have served as trailblazers. And honestly, we're standing up on their shoulders, and we thank you so much for how God has used you just to honor them. Then also, too, I just want to say thank you so much for using this opportunity to honor this woman of God and everything.
Yeah.
She's one who's very dear to me, and she's just a great, she's a diamond in the rough. And we thank God for who she is, for Phillips Temple, and also the life of our design. Again, I just want to throw a shout out to the West Mitchell Street Church and everything, and thank God for my mother. And also to a special shout out to the Phillips Temple LA Church. Because I know they're all online right now. Amen.
Yeah.
We're here to support Sister Cummings, who's definitely a dear mother of the church and everything. So thank you so much for all that you have done. And again, I'm just here just to support. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, my brother. God bless you. God bless you. And we appreciate you. And shout out to the Phillips Temple family. And Mrs. Cummings, Pastor Jackson, make sure we got Mrs. Cummings centered so we can see her beautiful face. Amen. There we go. So Mrs. Cummings, we want to talk about your husband, our bishop, the 40th bishop of the church. He was born in Kentucky. And just tell us a little bit about him, and as your daughter and son-in-law comes back on, but just sort of paint a picture and tell us about Bishop Cummings, those things that you recall and remember about him, please.
Well, yes, you've mentioned the fact that he was born in Kentucky, Allenville, Kentucky, a very small town there. And he was born on December the 2nd, 1926. And the family migrated to Indianapolis, Indiana, where he attended the public schools, and he graduated from Crispus Attucks High School. And then he went on to Lane College and received his Bachelor of Science in Political Science. And then he later went to law school, Indiana University Law School.
Yes, ma'am.
Where he thought he wanted to be a lawyer, but he was about to graduate, and then he received what he thought was the call to the ministry. So he talked with his pastor I don't recall the pastor's name right now, but he talked with him and he told him to pray over it, and they had prayer over it. And he told him that in his prayers to ask God to make it crystal clear that he was called, that this would be his calling. So he did. So the anecdote that follows that is that he spoke with his pastor about that, and his pastor said, well, we'll just pray over it and wait for an answer. When he left the pastor's house, I was told by him that he went to the corner to catch his bus. He did not drive. He didn't have a car, so he was on his traveling came through public transportation.
Transportation, right?
Yes, and so as he stood there waiting for the bus stop was in front of a pub, or what's the other word for a pub? Bar.
A bar.
A bar, yes. And a man came out, and at that time, my husband told me that he was drunk. But he has, my husband had a terrific vocabulary. So as he tells that story, it went from drunk to inebriated. And so from that time on,
right,
he just said the man was inebriated and bumped into him so forcibly that he fell to the ground. The man fell to the ground.
Yes.
And he said to my husband, oh, excuse me, Reverend, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you come to preach the word and to save men like me.
Wow.
So, what did Jim do? He didn't catch the bus.
Yes.
He ran back to the pastor's house and he told the pastor what had happened. And he said, that's about as clear as I can think that God would be calling me to the ministry. So that's his story. That's the way he told it. And from that point on, he was ordained by Bishop W.Y. Bell.
Yeah, William Yancey Bell. Well, I'm telling you, what a story. I mean, we know God works in mysterious ways, and we know God works fast, but that was super fast. Absolutely. We are so glad to have Dr. and Dr. Clay back on. You know, technology is something else. It works when it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But I'm so glad to have them both back on. And we were just talking about, your mom was just sort of giving us a sort of a background of Bishop Clay growing up in Kentucky and school and that kind of thing. So, Dr. Denise, what do you remember to add to the story? And I'm going to mute for just a second. What do you remember about the stories you heard of your father growing up in school and all? Share any memories that you have as well.
Well, my dad was a family man, and a lot of the stories, I think I just kind of, when I reflect about it, I think I lived through a few things. I heard a few stories about Lane College. When I was, that Daddy had the Lane College choir to come on numerous occasions. And when he did that, we heard more stories about when he was there. I think most of my recollection has to do with how I viewed him and started to learn about him. Now I can reflect back and think about the fact that he was a family man, he had a mission, he was involved in the ministry, and he had a strong message. And those things were captured in the fact that when I was growing up, the first thing I noticed about him was how much he spent time with our family. And I guess that was important to me because I'm an only child.
Okay.
And because of that, I think my parents took me almost everywhere they went. And so, in addition to family, I saw that Dad was interested in advocating for those who could not advocate for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, he was involved on the zoning board in Indianapolis, on the city council. And I remember when he was running for city council, he taught me how to vote.
Wow.
And I had the old voting machine where you had to pull the lever.
Lever down. Mm-hmm.
And they got sample voting machines for children. I took the voting machine to the grade school where I was, and I started showing children how to vote so that they could take it back to their families. And if their parents didn't know how to vote, they could learn how to
Learn
vote.
how to vote. Wow.
So that was one of the experiences that I had that I thought was important. He taught me the importance of voting at that particular time.
Mm-hmm. That's a great story, and so relevant because it appears, and I'm sure both of you would agree that his engagement and involvement in the community was extraordinary. Mrs. Cummings, tell us how the two of you all met. You and Bishop.
We met in, yes, we met in 1954. Had always known him because there was an organization at that time in Indianapolis called the Intercollegiate Club.
Yes.
It was made up of college students as well as recent graduates, and so we all were there. And it was always after church on Sunday, around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that we would all meet, and it was quite nice. We had a great fellowship. Most of us, to my knowledge, were all church. For some reason, it was a different day, and everybody had been to church, and they had gotten relaxed and then come to the Intercollegiate Club, and it was set up as very intellectual. It was a very intellectual situation.
Yeah.
And of course, Jim was one of the persons who gave what they called the current news.
Okay.
He was always into the politics and things like that. And he would bring the current news. And so we were grateful for that. And then later on, we married in 1956. And of course, you may know that this followed the death of his first wife, Denise's mother. Denise is my, I just call her my daughter.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
anyway, I've had her since she was 2 years old.
Yeah.
I've had her since she was 2 years old. And of course, we were with her father as he was pastoring First Northside CME Church in Indianapolis. And then he was sent to Norfolk, Virginia. And then he was sent back to Trinity Church in Indianapolis, Indiana. And then from there, he went to Lane Tabernacle in St. Louis.
Yes.
And of course, he was always busy in politics. And from there is where he was elevated to become bishop, the 40th bishop of the church. So in the meantime, we were assigned to the Episcopal district, and our mission work was in Ohio Conference, Ohio and Kentucky, and then of course, the African work in West Africa. We were missionaries there.
Yes.
So
yes.
That kind of
Indeed.
takes us through. The many years of his ministry and of the churches where he was assigned.
Well, one
So
one of the most. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
no, that's all right.
I was just going to
I'm
say, Mrs. Cummings and Dr. Denise and Dr. Julius, I came across, and I think you may have mentioned it. Somebody mentioned that. I mean, he created an ingenious concept before technology was the order of the day. This is out of Ebony magazine. They called him the
right.
telephone evangelist. Reverend James L. Cummings, a
Right.
33-year-old native of Allensville, learned about telephone evangelism during a CME church seminar in 1954. 4 years later, installed an automatic dial-up prayer phone in Trinity CME Church, Indianapolis, Indiana. Former law student, he turned to ministry as a result of the influence of his Christian home surrounding. His mother was a missionary. This unique dial-a-prayer phone gets a call for spiritual uplift at a rate of one every 3 minutes and gives callers um, pre-recorded messages of guidance prepared by the pastor. This gives new meaning to Jesus is on the main line. Tell us what you want.
Yes.
I mean, that is beyond
Yeah.
brilliant. Beyond,
Yes.
I mean, you all are obviously you were aware of that, but what do you recall him, talking about having a telephone ministry in the 1950s? That's amazing.
Yes. He was far ahead of his time at that particular time, and I understand that he was the first black preacher to have had that service. So every day he would put on a new prayer, a new scripture, and a prayer, and it was well advertised. And just as you said, it was written up in the Ebony magazine.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Denise, did you know about that? Was that around when you were? And I'm not trying to date you. Hey,
Really? I remember it. The recording machine used to be on our second floor when we were in Indianapolis, in his study. And there were times when he would have guest members from the church to come and put a prayer and scripture on the recording as well.
mhm.
So he also included members of the church as well.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So let me stop for a moment because we have a lot of folks watching and commenting. First of all, Lachelle Mabry says, "Hello, Mrs. Cummings. Bishop Cummings
Oh,
baptized me as an
hello.
infant at Trinity. It's great
Yes.
to see you." And
That's
we
right.
have
Yeah.
the one and only Dr. Nellie King. "Hello, Mrs. Cummings. I'm very happy to see you.
Hi, Nellie.
Love Nellie King." And Sister Peggy, all the way from Houston, Texas, is watching. And Sister Pamela Buford. And then we have, we're so delighted, always delighted whenever we have a bishop watching. Say hello to Bishop and Mrs. Paul A.G. Stewart. They are watching this
Hello.
broadcast and
Hello.
certainly
Hello there.
send their regards. And it's always a joy to have and see Bishop Stewart. Sister Robinson is watching from St. Paul in Chester, Pennsylvania. And greetings to the Cummings and the Clay family. And Robert Stewart said Bishop Cummings was a preacher by excellence. I was present at Williams Temple when he preached Bishop Joseph Johnson's funeral. Um, and so we're just so grateful to all of these wonderful people who are taking time out to watch and to share this evening. Aloha from Mr. Al Harrison, Al and Claudia Harrison, and we're grateful. So let's talk about him as a pastor now. His preaching style, his ministry, his teaching, and what do you all remember about that? Because I've heard from many that he was quite an intellectual thinker. I think I heard he had the great mastery of words, and you even alluded to that, Mrs. Cummings. But tell us about his ministry and his preaching and memories of that. Either one of you can go.
Well, he did have a tremendous vocabulary. In his readings, he would recognize words and immediately would use them. And he would often tell other people, when you hear a new word, use it right away and it becomes your word. And so his aunt Benny
I
Mae,
like that.
his mother's sister, his aunt, gave him a dictionary while he was at Lynn College. And he studied that dictionary like it was a textbook.
Yes.
And he would use words and try them on you. While we were married, he would often have a paragraph of that he'd written up and memorized, and then he would give it to me. And I would look at him and say, what is that all about? He said, because he had so many new words in there. And he was trying things out on me before he got into the public with it. So he was one of those who studied the dictionary, and he wanted the best. And he said that as you if you're in college, and he always told young people, get yourself a dictionary, get the words and use them, be intelligent about it. Just show people that you just didn't come through the front door and went out the back. You should know that you've been educated.
That's
enough
right.
Enough to use those terms.
That's
and be
right.
comfortable with it. But he was very, I told him he was arrogant in a very nice way. He was often impressed by showing off what he could say and what he could do in his paragraphs. So I just would tell him that. I said, but it's in a good way. And he liked to integrate so much with the philosophers, saying that what Socrates had said, and he would Plato and Immanuel Kant, and he would just do whatever he could using those words. And I think the one he really liked just because it sounded great, and that was Spinoza.
Spinoza.
He would say Spinoza because he kind of thought, well, most people hadn't heard of Spinoza, so he was able to say Spinoza and his philosophy. So
wow.
he was a show off in that way.
Well, Dr. Denise, and there's someone sitting next to you, the Right Reverend Dr. Julius Clay. Can you hear me?
I hear you, but I'm not the right reverend, but I do hear you.
Okay, all right. With Dr. Clay. Before I ask you all to continue, let me acknowledge also, let me put your mother back up here because we, hold on a second. All right. And bring her back. There we go. But I also want to acknowledge and recognize that we have our senior bishop and the first lady of our church, Senior Bishop Reddick and Mrs. Wendy Reddick watching, and they certainly send their regards and hellos to the Cummings family.
Thank you.
Always glad.
Thank you.
Yes, always glad to have them on as well. So tell us about your dad's ministry and what you all remember about him preaching, even as a little girl, you know, as a typical PK kid, if you will. What do you remember about those days following your dad and his preaching style and all of that? What's your memories?
Well, when he was in Indianapolis, he had worship services at 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And he usually preached both services. But then he usually also preached in the afternoon at another church somewhere in the city at 3 o'clock. And then we would go and eat many times at my uncle and aunt's home and go back to church at 7 o'clock for another service. So what I did get from that is that he was interested in making sure people knew about the Lord. that was a good time for us. I learned the importance of worship by watching and being a part of Dad's ministry. I really felt like I was included and that I should have a ministry as well, because it was important in life based on just the amount of time we spent. There were other times when I would see Dad get together with other ministers from in various denominations who were his friends, and they would talk about preaching, what they preached, how they preached it, how they delivered it, and they just had a good time.
Yeah.
And that was in both Indianapolis and St. Louis. Many times we went out to dinner, and on Friday nights we had what we call family night. We had it both in Indianapolis and in St. Louis. And on Friday night, we would go to various places, but most of the time we went to the Chase Park Plaza Hotel. And all the ministers, or I should say many ministers, would be there with their families. And they would go from table to table talking to each other. So I learned the importance of ministry there, and the importance of taking your family with you and sharing.
Yes, yes. Dr. Clay, what do you remember about Bishop Cummings?
I remember a lot of things about him. He was a mentor for me.
Okay.
And kind of like a blueprint for me as it relates to my ministry. He always predicted that I would be a minister, and he always thought he called me before God did. He could be funny when he wanted to. He served in many capacities. When he was in St. Louis, he was on the school board. I don't know if that's been mentioned or not. He was president of the school board. He was also on the board of Eaton Theological Seminary, where I ended up going to school there. And I went there. Luther Smith also went to school there. And so I went because of the two of them. He was also on he was vice president of the National Council of Churches as a pastor.
Yeah.
Was vice president. And so he just did quite a few things as it relates to the community. So I tried to follow in his footsteps as it relates to that. He was a poet. I heard it was mentioned some of the poets that he used. He loved Robert Frost. He loved James Russell Lowell. He could wreck a house just with his remarks, and he knew stories. So I just kind of follow him as it relates to that. He loved to quote Socrates, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And so I picked that up as well. So he was a great man. He went to Lane College.
Yes.
And I also went to Lane College. He used to come by and give my grandmother a little something to help me when I was there. Sometimes he'd give her $10. $10 in the 60s was a lot of money.
Yes, it was.
And my grandmother would send it to me, and she said, "Pastor Cummings came by, and so that's why I have a little money to help you." And at that time, we couldn't eat hamburgers and steak. I did me a bologna sandwich, couldn't afford lettuce and tomato. And so I just get me a bologna sandwich, had to wash all my clothes and everything with that $10. He's just a great person.
Wow.
I could tell you a whole lot.
I'm sure that is incredible. And you're really helping to paint a wonderful picture of him for those of us who did not have the pleasure of knowing him or meeting him. I'm so delighted that we have two more bishops watching this afternoon. Certainly, I'm sure they have memories. Let me acknowledge my own bishop, Bishop Thomas L. Brown, and Dr. Louise Baker Brown, who are watching and saying hello to the Cummings and Clay family.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
Always a delight to have my bishop and Dr. Louise on with us. And also we have Bishop Marshall and Mrs. Yvonne Gilmore, who are sharing with us this Sunday, as they do most Sundays. And I just wanted to let you know that the Gilmores were sharing as well.
Oh, good evening. Good evening.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Bishop and Mrs. Dr. Brown and Bishop and Mrs. Gilmore and all of the other bishops. And if there are other bishops watching, you all let me know, because sometimes I'm not able to catch and see all of them watching on different channels. So please, brothers and sisters, let me know. So let me ask you this now, as we continue this wonderful conversation. His work in politics, his political work. Tell us a little bit about his. I think he was a member, and I don't want to. I think it says James L. Cummings received the highest vote of any candidate, and he was elected an Indianapolis City Councilman. Oh, that was just absolutely phenomenal. What do you remember about his work as a city councilman for Indianapolis?
Well, Denise and I both went out into the city with him to tell people about him and to work just as hard as we could to help him win. And of course, just as you heard Denise say earlier, she had been taught early on voting machines and the vote. So we were in line with him with his activities in the community. He enjoyed it all, and he actually received more votes than the one who was running for mayor of Indianapolis. So the joke was that the mayor said he should have been running along with Cummings so that he could have gotten a few more votes. But he won. But anyway, that was a joke that they had amongst them. So the other things that he was busy with as far as civil work and so forth, he did go to the March on Washington back in the 63, I believe it was. And he followed with his friends, and he worked with Dr. Martin Luther King, and he also worked with C.T. Vivian. I think we just lost him a month or so ago, a couple of months ago maybe. And then Dr. Lowry, he worked with him, and so he was interested. He ran with many of these great men, and that was his philosophy as well, that voting was very important. And he followed through with it. He loved to serve in those capacities. And he had, for most of his life, been very active in the community.
I took away from all of his service in the community as a city councilman, as president of the school board, Dad really liked to shape the policy of any organization that had a lot of control over people.
Okay.
He was a person who advocated for those who could not advocate for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can't advocate and you're not at a particular time to govern, you need policies that will make sure that certain things take place. And he was really instrumental in making sure that various civic policies were changed, and was involved with making sure that he could help form the way he thought it should go.
Mm-hmm. Just sounds like a tremendous Renaissance man. Well learned, well read, well traveled, and I understand that he was well dressed as well. Someone told me that he was quite a dapper dresser. Would you all agree to that? I'm sure you would.
I agree.
I
Yeah,
he
he was
looked like
dressed.
$1 million man. He may not have had a nickel in his pocket, but he was like $1 million man.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So let's do this. Let's talk about. He was elected from Lane in St. Louis. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
And so let's talk about, when did you all hear that he was going to run for bishop? How did that happen? Mrs. Cummings, did he come home and tell you, I'm running, I'm offering myself as a candidate? Or could you see it all along that this was something that was imminent, that was going to happen? And Dr. Denise, you chime in, and Dr. Clay, you chime in as well about his offering himself as a candidate for bishop.
Yes. Well, when he made when he thought of it, at least when he expressed thought to me, it was a thing that was rather spiritual with him, because he said, let's just pray over it. And so many of our prayers as a family were prayers that we were asking God to follow us. And he used the same sentence that his pastor had told him about preaching, that God would make it crystal clear. And so that was kind of his philosophy there, that God would make it crystal clear for him. And as he was preparing for that, he had many times where he was exposed to learn more and see more about the church. And he was also a member of the Ministers Alliance, Christians and Jews. And it was during that time that he received scholarship from the Hillel Foundation, which wanted him to go to Israel and study. And when that came up, of course, the great members of Lane Tabernacle raised funds for me to go as well. So I received the scholarship, and we both went to Israel and studied for 6 weeks. So he was able to integrate that time with the many times that he was going to preach, and what he had learned from the scriptures even there, and how he integrated all of that into what he had learned and spoke about. So he was well groomed, and God had made it made it a place where he could go and enjoy and learn and use what he had learned as he became elevated to the ministry of becoming a bishop of our great Zion.
Can I jump in here, Skip? Can I jump in? Yes, he was a people person. People loved him. A lot of us as ministers, we would walk around with him. Whenever you would see him, he would never be by himself. And he was a people person. And then in politics, we always said that you have to have ground support. That is to say, you have to have the people on the ground with you. And then you also have to have aerial support. I think the Bible talks about Jesus strove with man and with God. And so what I'm trying to say is the people loved him, and many of the bishops loved him as well. And so he got the support from the top and from the ground. I remember I was in the Chase Park Plaza when I was a young man in college, and he was going to the General Conference in 1978. I think he was elected then.
Yeah.
And he said, Brother Julius, he could say my name like nobody else. Julius, he called me Julius. Julius, you need to go down to the General Conference so that you can help me get elected. And so even though you were a young person, he would gravitate to you, and he was just a tremendous person in that regard.
I think what I recall in 78, Dad asked me to pray, but he also asked me to fast and pray at the 78 General Conference, and I did. And I think it took 8 hours before he was elected. So by the time he was elected, I was just relieved. He had made it.
Wow, 8 hours. I tell you. Well, I'm certain you all remember that, and what a joyous time. And here he is with Bishop Lindsay as well in May of 1978. And here's a picture. Let me share this one also. Tell us about his meeting President Jimmy Carter.
Well, he was always excited about any of the leaders of the country. He also had met 2 or 3 other presidents, but that's the one picture we have of him meeting with President Carter.
Yes.
But he was excited. He was excited about it all.
I'm sure. And he joined the College of Bishops. Let me put this photo up with many of our distinguished bishops who have gone on to glory. But what just an impressive bench, if you will. So as we are celebrating our 150th anniversary, we are writing, and sharing stories about our bishops and our church. What should we remember Bishop Cummings for? What's the one thing you think that the church should remember him for? And I'll give all of you a chance to respond if you would like.
Mother?
Well, I think he was very genuine. In his beliefs. He was a religious man, not just in the public, but also with the family. Mm-hmm. As you heard Denise mention before, that he was a family man, and we celebrated our family, especially on Fridays. He would be very busy during the week, of course, with the church, but Fridays were the time that we would make plans to be with Denise and her grandparents and other persons of our family. And he was also very serious in his civic work, mm-hmm. and most definitely in the church work. So he enjoyed different things, and he was so involved and so serious about each one. So I don't think he just enjoyed people. He enjoyed the preachers, mm-hmm. and they would get together and share their sermons together. And sometimes they would talk about sermons and subjects that they were going to talk about on the next Sunday of the various churches of the pastors who were just together. They were all talking about the same thing, and they would say, well, my pastor preached a sermon on such and such a thing, and then the other one would say, well, that's what my preacher preached on. He preached on so and so and so. Well, it ended up that they basically were talking about whatever they preached on that Sunday. They had worked it up on Saturdays or Fridays or one Sunday. So that was a big joke.
I think that still happens. We preachers, we tend to talk to our very dear and close friends as we're working out what we're preaching, So I think that still happens sometimes. Dr. Denise, what should we remember your dad for in this 150th year as we go into the 150th year of our church? Oh, hold on just a second. Okay.
I think Mother has touched on it, but if I had to use words with his ministry, he wanted to make sure that the sheep were fed. He had a mission to advocate for those who could not advocate for themselves. And within that mission, he was one who, as my husband mentioned, invested in people. He was large. He just invested in so many. One of the persons that I am very shaped by, who's a mentor for me, is attorney Pat Russell McLeod,
who happens to be
go ahead.
let you know that Dr. Pat Russell McLeod is on. She says Bishop Cummings was my mentor and neighbor, and Dr. Denise Cummings Clay is my mentee, and
That's
Dr.
right.
Dr. Pat Russell McLeod is my friend, my
That's-
dear friend. So I am
That's
delighted that Dr. Pat is on. But as you were saying, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. He invested in her, and she has invested in me. So it just keeps going. He invested in Dr. Luther Smith. He invested in my husband. He invested in our Bishop Walker. And Bishop Walker used that whole notion of investment when he became, when he gave the Episcopal address, when he was elected bishop. And the importance of investing in people. The message that I think that Dad gave was that God is first in everything. And if we put him first in everything, everything else will fall into place. Secondly, education was important to him, and he pushed everybody going to school, learning something new, and being a continual learner. And then lastly, I think what I look at Dad as one who promoted church and community, integrating the two and making a difference wherever you are.
One of the statements that he used to make that I picked up over the years, and I use it whenever I can, is don't minimize what God has maximized. He used to say that. And so in a word or a sentence, what I would like to say as it relates to him, he would always leave everything better than he found it. If he saw it a certain way and he saw he could fix it, he wouldn't just leave it like it was. And everywhere, if he saw you, he would find something to say positive about you and leave you better than he would find you. If he went to a church, that church was better after having him gone there. If he was a member of a board, the board is still talking about him even years after he's been gone.
Wow.
So I kind of got that from him. Everywhere I went, I tried to leave it better than I found it.
That is just tremendous. So many wonderful people are watching, and thank you so much for all of you who are sharing. There are a couple of people that I think you also want to know watching. We have Mrs. Elizabeth Coleman. And Mama Ossie Hart are watching. Let me put their message up. Hello to Jean, Denise, and Dr. Clay. Long-time friends, lovely people. And Mama Ossie Hart. Hello, everybody. Love you. and David, look, David Isom. Reverend Dr. David Isom. Mrs. Cummings gave me my first tie pin, and I bet David still has that tie pin. So. Well, listen, you all have been just wonderful in sharing your memories. I think that quote, I have me another quote for my book that I'm working on, Dr. Denise. Amen. I just love that thought that you shared about minimizing and maximizing. I just think that's just profound. And so I appreciate that, and other thoughts that have been shared on the life and legacy of Bishop James L. Cummings, our 40th bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. You have been very generous with your time, and we thank God for your presence here. And just wanted to share just a couple of more items before we do the world premiere of Raptuous Scenes. A few pictures that I found. Now, one of the things Pastor Jackson is going to have to help me with and help you with is for you to share a few pictures, Mrs. Cummings, a bishop that you have. Get Pastor Jackson to scan those pictures for me, and earn his salary as your pastor. He's got to help me out. Pastor Jackson, where are you? I know you're close by. You hear me? There you go.
Yes, sir. I heard you loud and clear.
You got the assignment.
Thank you, Dr. Mason.
I'm gonna feed
Yes,
you when
sir.
you
Go
come.
get, listen, go get on.
You know I'm
Yes,
gonna take
sir.
care.
I look forward to
We are delighted, and I'm gonna bring up Dr. Kelli Williamson Key, who is the daughter of Bishop and Dr. Henry Williamson, and Kelli has created a magnificent project where she has called on the kids, although they're all adults, of our Episcopal leaders. I think she calls them children of the Episcopal. And let me kind of, there we go. All right. Let me do this for just a second and unmute. Kelli, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I can. Good evening.
Okay, wonderful and welcome. Delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Shortly after, on Friday, after that long and magnificent General Connectional Board, the new chair of the College of Bishops, Bishop Kenneth Carter, called me, kind of in a panic. And I said, oh, Lord, wonder what Bishop wants. And then he shared with me about the wonderful video production that you, along with Reverend Valencia Edner, who joins us as well, had put together, and asked me if I would mind not sharing it. I said, Bishop, I don't just share, I do a world premiere. Okay, I don't just share anything. I do it. If it's coming, it's got to be big. And also, jokingly, I said I would be honored. He sent me the link, and I was so moved. I think I've listened to it about 2 or 3 times, and I just thought it was beautiful. And then, lo and behold, there's Dr. Denise Cummings Clay.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So, look, I knew that it was a divine moment that this timing would be used. But very briefly, just tell us about the project. And I'm going to Dr. Julius and Dr. Denise and Mrs. Cummings, I'm going to put you in the guest room for a few minutes as they tell us a little bit about this great project. So just hang tight for just a second. All righty. So welcome again, and so glad to have you. Tell us about this magnificent project that the two of you worked on.
I'm gonna let Reverend Edner start off.
Okay,
So,
Reverend, glad to have you.
It's wonderful to be here. I've been watching every week, and I've just really been amazed and excited about all that you are doing. Thank you so much for this history of our church and the people in it. As I told you earlier, I've got to run and go do night church school.
Yes.
So, but I wanted to be here to introduce this with Kelli Williamson Key, and to let you know that she's not going to tell anyone how much of a labor of love this has been for her in connecting with the other children of the Episcopacy. I know it had my name on there. I'm a child of the parsonage, but not the Episcopacy. Reverend and Dr. and Mrs. Clay knew my father quite well, and so therefore I thought it not that this had to be a God doing, that this was how this got to be able to be unveiled today. Kelly's done a wonderful job with this, and being inclusive of as many children of the Episcopacy as she could. One of the things I want to say before I go is that you will find that Bridget Flake and that Bridget and Brandon Best are not in this, because it is a Raptuous Scene, and it pulls at your heartstrings.
I know it does.
Related to life and death, and we just didn't want to be insensitive to where they are. So those who are watching who will say, well, what happened to them and what happened to them? Well, that's what happened with them, because we know that they are gifted singers, and they would have fit right into what has happened, but we wanted to be sensitive.
Yeah.
I can't say enough about Kelli and her work and this whole team of CMAM. They are an amazingly gifted group of people.
And CMAM stands for, just for those
Connectional Music and Arts Ministry.
Okay.
Yes.
Connectional Music and Arts Ministry. It has only been since 14 that we have been in existence as part of the committees of the church, and it was to bring excellence and standard excellence to music and arts in our churches. And so we're beginning to do some of those things that we've wanted to do, inclusive of this. Being able to look at the hymns of our church and to take them to another level, to bless everyone and to bless the people. So I just wanted to come on and as female coordinator, say to Kelli, we are excited about what you have done and all of the children of the Episcopacy. And thank you so much, Dr. Mason, for this opportunity to unveil and to premiere her work on your show today. I'm going to go teach Sunday school.
You go.
I know that everyone will be blessed by this production. Thank you so much.
I am sure. Kelli?
Yes, sir.
What you want to say about the project? You masterfully arranged it. Tell us, just give us something before we premiere it.
I'll say this. We have wonderful leadership under the chair of Bishop Jefferson Snorton, and of course, Reverend Valencia Edner as our lead in CMAM. We have an awesome leadership that really impresses upon us to utilize our gifts to the glory of God. And on CMAM, so many of us are gifted in so many areas, and that I'm just grateful that we have the type of leadership that's able to utilize our gifts in such a way that it'll bless the people of God. You know, whether it's music, whether it's arts, whether it's poetry, whether it's dance, whatever form of performing arts that exist in the church, and whatever gifts that lie there, we have the leadership to touch those people to be able to give their gifts to the people of God. And so when it came to doing this piece, we've all been talking about the hymn, and you know, it ebbs and flows at times. And there are parts of the hymn that is very, very dark in terms of the pain, in terms of the trials and tribulations of being a Christian on this earth, and the desire to want to move upward in terms of to those heavenly realms, if you know what I'm saying. So I did a lot of research on Bishop Lucius Holsey and Reverend Fayette Montgomery Hamilton. Those two gentlemen. To really dig deep in terms of what was the motivation, what were the times that they were living in when that hymn was composed. I know it was in a book called Songs of Grace. It was a compilation of hymns that Bishop Holsey had did. And that you know, Reverend Hamilton was just having to be there to really give melody and things like that of the sort. So the fact that it's a part of a larger work, you know, I'm excited to see if it exists, what other songs are in that book. So I still have research to do, but I'm just grateful to be able to do this for this piece, for this song, because it means so much to the church as our most notable and our national hymn. I'm just grateful to be given the opportunity to actually work at this level for that particular song.
There's not a time that the hymn is played that someone doesn't tear up. You know, or as my kids like to say, Daddy, get all up in their feelings, you know, when you hear this. And then you were able to invite the children of the Episcopacy, including Dr. Denise Cummings Clay and many of the other ones that will be featured as well. So it is an absolute joy to do the world premiere of this magnificent piece. And we invite you now to listen and to be blessed as I have been.
Say gracious Lord, where am I now? Am I thy servant still? Flesh and blood, my flesh and blood, my soul o'erthrow, and set not thy
Jesus. Mm, mm, mm. I'm just full right now. I really am. Just really full, so grateful. Kelly and Edner, and to the children of the Episcopal, to this great ministry, and to the history of our church. Something about it that just continues to resonate with what's going on in the world right now. And this hymn just sets it apart. We needed this hymn at this time, those of us who are CMEs. And so I know as I read in the comments, the messages, it blessed us tremendously. And so we thank you, Kelly, Dr. Kelly, and to your wonderful team of musicians and all of the children of the Episcopal, and to Mrs. Norma Cummings, and to Dr. Julius Clay and Dr. Denise Cummings Clay. Thank you for sharing and spending time with us this evening. Love you. God bless you. May God keep you. And I just thank God for this moment. And we thank God for all of you for watching and sharing today. And I know that sometime soon, Dr. Duhart will send an email out with the link to that masterpiece on YouTube, so all of you can be blessed as well. Thank you for joining me. And this is Skip Mason. If you have quotes of bishops, please share them. I'm still working on my book, In Their Own Words, getting down to the wire. This masterpiece of a song will inspire me to continue to get to the finish line. But please share those wonderful quotes and wisdom from the bishops so I can collect and include them in this book. I love you. God loves you. And remember, Black lives do matter. And as we prepare to depart this place, go in love and go in peace and go with the joy of Jesus in your heart. Have a blessed evening and a great week.